to our next discussion, which is on third-party integrations and their implications on cloud IR. As organizations increasingly migrate their operations to the cloud, they embrace third-party services and integrations to enhance functionality and efficiency. However, while these integrations offer numerous benefits, they also introduce new challenges to incident response within cloud environments. Let's leverage the expertise of our guests to get some insights on it. Please welcome our panel members, Vikram Mehta, founder and CEO, Chai5IO, Krishnakumar Govindarajan, CTO at MiQ, and Apurva Dalal, CIO at Adani Green Energy Limited and Adani Solar Manufacturing. This panel will be moderated by Dhruva Goyal, who is the co-founder and CEO at BugBase.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining in today. Today's topic is really interesting because I think one of the core reasons why the industry on its own has grown is because people are now leaving things up to the experts. Whoever's good at what, let them take care of it. And then we'll onboard them as a vendor, we'll onboard them as a contractor and so on. And that is what many companies have done, from startups to enterprise, and it's really grown the overall economy. But as you can imagine, it presents an interesting problem to CISOs as well as CIOs, that you are integrating your own data and your own infrastructure with someone else's. And that is always a major risk. And that is what today's panel will be about. We'll be trying to understand from a CISO's perspective as well as from a vendor's perspective on how these third-party integrations work, how a CISO looks at their cloud strategy, how they look at their incident response strategy according to that, and so on. So to kick off, I would like every panelist to briefly, introduce themselves first, and then, answer the age-old question of what do you prefer, cloud or on-prem? So SaaS or on-prem, right? And that's always an interesting challenge.
Thanks. Morning, everyone. Thanks, Dhruva. So my name is Vikram. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Chai5, based out of Gurgaon. I've led various leadership roles in security in the past. To sort of answer your question, right? So I think just like there has been an era of cloud adoption or transition, etc. I think it's now the industry is going through a shift of similar nature, but into SaaS. Right. So I think just like there were on-prem infrastructure and deployments, there was initially a reluctance, whether to move to the cloud or not. Similarly, now, there is massive amounts of SaaS adoption. Organizations do not really, require to or want to manage applications and data themselves, but would rather offload, that kind of data processing and expertise to SaaS platforms and the product companies out there. But again, that comes with its own challenges. For instance, regulated industries such as banking or telecommunication would sort of have a little bit of apprehensions for the right reasons, and that's where third-party risk management and security plays a very, very crucial role to ensure that there's a balance between business operations, technology excellence, and security at the same time. Yeah, so I think looking forward to the discussion should be super interesting.
Yes, it's good afternoon, folks. So my name is Krish, and I lead the technology arm of a company called MiQ, which is in the ad tech space. So coming to this question in terms of SaaS and on-prem and whatnot, for a company like ours, we're pretty much kind of 100% on AWS, and now the choice is between in terms of going for like pure play SaaS integrations, or how much do we want to host or manage something within our infrastructure. And like what Vikram mentioned, for me, it's more of a trade-off conversation with multiple different levers involved. One aspect of it is definitely the cost, but that cannot be the be-all and all. But of course, depending on the size of the organization and stuff, it can play a big factor. But at the end of the day, it is about, do you have the expertise? How much do you really want to invest? And is it really going to be sustainable for you for the long run? And how much does this influence or part of your core strategy or your core identity as a company, right? So that really translates to where you want to invest. especially when a smaller organization, where there is only so much that can be done. So prioritization is really key. So those are all the different factors that goes in. But given a choice or the priority or the preference is like what Vikram mentioned, there are experts out there. Let them do their job, and I might as well focus on what I'm good at, what I'm supposed to be good at. When I say I, like the company, focus is the key there.
Choice between SaaS and on-prem, it depends on organization's requirement, I would suggest. Basically, you have to look at your enterprise landscape, look at the applications that you have, what you can take it to cloud, what you can keep it on-prem. So, like Vikram and Krishna both said, so some of the organization, definitely, because their requirements suffice when they go totally on cloud. But if you look at manufacturing industries, okay, when it comes to MES system, manufacturing execution system, you can't take it on cloud. These are all OT systems, okay? So it has to be on-prem. So that decision will depend on organization to organization, and the assessment has to be done.
Thank you so much, everyone. So that's very interesting. Everyone is in favor of both. I would like a lot of people to be in favor of SaaS as well, because, I'm a vendor. And on-prem deployments are complicated. And just taking on from there, whenever you're onboarding a vendor, right? And I am a vendor, so, whenever an enterprise onboards me, I get a long form that I have to basically fill out that contains, all kinds of questions, ISO, where are you storing data, what is your data flow diagram, and 10 other things. And, I look at it as a chore, but of course, I understand from a CISO perspective, from a leader perspective, that is very important. So, Apurva sir, I think, you would be able to provide some insight on this. How do you look at onboarding vendors? How does it change from, say, onboarding a smaller startup to, say, a scaled up enterprise? And how do you manage that overall process, if you can shed some light on that?
So, like you said, you get long list of questionnaire, but that is, good for both the sides, because whatever you feel, we have to read and we have to verify. Okay. See, the reason behind it, because organization is putting a trust in a partner, and that trust has to be validated before, you can't have a blind trust, because after all, it is organization's data, and there are certain data which are IP based and all that. So reason for doing those things, onboarding vendor, is very critical, where you have to go through long assessment. So definitely, every organization defines a risk management framework, and one of the important topic in that is how do you onboard third-party partners into that. That's where, where the organizations will verify, what are your credentials on the security side, whether you are ISO compliant, SOC 2 compliant, depending on the type of vendor, HIPAA compliant and all that. Secondly, they will also review your system architecture, because, when you put a trust between the two architectures, they need to review how your integration will happen, how you are going to handle the data that you are going to access. So if some data which is going to be with you, what is the strategy that the vendor will be adopting, whether there will be encryption standards, what are your coding standards. So, regular code reviews and assessment will happen. Definitely, and because, see, this is a partnership, so it is not that once done, then it will not happen. It has to be a regular, because as you mature, as partner also matures and the organization matures, the strategy has to be reviewed. So that is very important, because, otherwise, what you have done like 3 years back will not be true after 3 years. So that is a continuous assessment has to be there for the vendor also. And, that is over a period of time, trust is there. It is not that trust will not be there. But, that in today's world, it is difficult because of the cyber attacks that are happening. Organization needs to protect themselves. That is how you do vendor onboarding, where you have to go through all the long list of assessment questionnaires. We have to also look at what is your data resiliency plan, because if something fails, how do I come up again?
Backup.
Yeah.
How are you taking care of it?
So those are the things.
I think this is very important, sir. And CISOs maintaining this and actually enforcing these in a strong way overall supports the ecosystem as well. So it's really important for many startups to actually realize, that they have to become ISO compliant, they have to become SOC 2 compliant, and so on. And you're very right, in the point that, the overall credentials of the organization also have to be verified, because it is a long-term partnership after all. B2B, it is not B2C. And there needs to be support, there needs to be, many other things and so on. So thank you so much for that answer, sir. I'll move on to the next question. So this question is to Krishna. So, we spoke about onboarding a vendor. Now, I would like to understand from your perspective, how does the presence of a third-party integration impact your strategy, right? So how do you actually monitor what is going on with that integration? And, how is it that you're taking care of the alerts? Are there any particular best practices that you recommend when engaging with a third party?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to touch upon that questionnaire that you mentioned, right? When I have to, or when my team has to submit it, it needs to be really short. When I'm expecting it from others, it's never short enough. It's need as much info as possible, right? So we get to understand what exactly is going on behind the scenes in terms of what these integrations are really, or what are we really getting into. But then when you look at it, it is about, this doesn't really take into consideration what are the best practices and stuff that you need to have within your ecosystem in the first place, right? So it is all about, a lot of previous panelists also mentioned in terms of risk mitigation and whatnot. So the fact of the matter is, these integrations are going to be there. It is going to proliferate. But then what can you do from an architectural aspect, right? It's not just the application architecture side of things, but also the data architecture side of things, to understand what kind of data do you have, the sensitivity, there is different tiering of that data, and kind of gets into the zoning of that data as well. So, and when you're looking at all these integrations, what kind of data that really needs to be exposed to these through these third parties? So what kind of interventions do you need to have in place? What kind of monitoring, alerting needs to have in place? So it's pretty situational as well, but then it helps a lot to go back to the drawing board of what should be the landscape, what should it look like? Because essentially this is pretty much what we did in the recent past as well, where we wanted to bring in more of these controls, more oversight, more of these certifications and everything sorted out. But then when you really look at it, just focusing on those things it's not going to really help. So we had to take a step back and really go back to the drawing board, which has led to good amount of checks and balances, bringing in proper governance and stuff in place. So coming to the monitoring and alerting, there is a lot of tools and everything that is available, but you can't just rely on that, in terms of helping. So it needs a holistic approach.
No, got it. And taking on from there, Vikram, I think this could be very interesting for you as well, because you have the experience as heading a security team at BigMyTrip, and then now you have your own company. So you've seen both sides of how this, data flows in and out. So, in your perspective, how do you manage all this data? How do you ensure that the right data is going, as Krishna mentioned as well? And how do you monitor, any kind of sensitive information maybe flowing onto the other party and so on?
Absolutely. So I think what Chris mentioned is super critical, right? So apart from a standard vendor assessment checklist, it's really, really important to understand, or rather, not just for the security team, but also for the larger engineering and product teams, to understand what that integration is all about. What APIs are being called, down to what data is actually leaving, your organization into a third party. If left alone to a security team, very often, more often than not, security teams might not have the visibility of actually what parameters are, being sent out via an API call. So I think it's, in my opinion, it's a larger responsibility of product and engineering functions as well, to own third-party risk management, right? And to own the context. So not every third-party integration is alike. So there would be certain, so there would be a product integration. There could be, a T&M engagements where you might have data flowing through endpoints. So depending upon the kind.
But how do you own the context?
So I think that trickles down from business requirement, right? So what is a third party trying to solve for you, right? Is it a system integration? Is it is it outsourcing business processes? Is it a call center that's working for you, right? So so every third party integration or outsourcing engagement should, in my opinion, be treated differently and assessed differently. Although there would be standards that would be measured against, but I think that context is super critical to ensure that a security team and technology teams are actually, going down to the level of detail that's really required. I'll give you a couple of examples. So let's say, if there is a process, call center process that needs to be outsourced, and for an organization, customer data is like super critical and very, very important. If there is a non-negotiable control, right? Organizations might just want to extend their DLP and NGAV systems to call centers, saying that, okay, fine, fair enough, we trust you, but we would like our visibility to be there as well, right? So I think that's the context that I'm talking about. Nowadays, the good thing is that there are a lot of technology solutions that also help this, right? So there are data observability platforms, correct, that can help, get down to the level of looking at what data is being exchanged from one third party to another. So I think it's a mix of 2 or 3 aspects that have to go hand in hand. And like I mentioned again, context is really important as far as at least critical third-party integrations are concerned.
With regards to observability, I think that is becoming extremely important, and I'm seeing many companies pop up in the space of observability as well, be it cloud or on-prem. And it's great that you brought that up. Now coming to the next question, which is for Apurva sir, which is on compliance. Compliance is something everyone kind of dreads, but again, as we discussed earlier, it is important. From a CISO's perspective, how do you take care of compliance from a global point of view, right? Your customers may be somewhere in the US, your customer may be in Europe. Europe ke liye there is GDPR, US there will be CCPA. In India, there is now DP law that is also coming. How do you take care of these compliance challenges? How do you ensure that everything is compliant? Have you thought of these compliance as code solutions as well? Right, and if you can talk, give a bit of insight on that.
Yeah, so if you look today, the system integrators, which they are operating globally. So definitely compliance is the key. And when you look at compliance, it is you have to see the local regulatory requirement where the data should reside. Because if you are processing for Europe has stringent requirement where the data should reside on that. Now even India will, with DPDP coming in, it will happen the same day. So yes, definitely for compliance, you will have to have multiple certification. As a system integrator, yeah, they'll have to have multiple certification. As a organization, when I am partnering with a system integrator, I will also look at what compliance they follow, whether it is fitting my requirement, whether it is adhering to the enterprise security policies that we have in place. The second part will be, when you look at compliance for system integrators or as well as for enterprises, what is the fallback plan? Whether, how do you give me my data back? As an organization, if I am hosting a data somewhere, I will always ask, if I want to terminate a contract, how do I get my data back? What will be the data erasure policy and all that? So there are, and definitely you have to involve your legal and compliance team over there, because, laws of the land you have to follow.
Correct.
So unless, as a CISO, we won't be able to understand nitty-gritty of those laws. So that's where you need legal help also to understand the nitty-gritty. and ensure that when you make a contracts, your contract has to be robust.
Correct.
Otherwise, it's very difficult. You'll end up in a legal battle, which is not good for both the parties.
Correct. Yeah. No, I think it's very interesting. Working with SIs for a CISO, I would imagine would be complex because at the back end, where is the SI storing the data? What all 10 vendors are they working with? Are they following these global laws or not? I think, from a legal and compliance perspective, having a strong contract is one of the only ways to properly enforce it. And then again, you're dependent on the credentials of the SI that you're kind of working with.
And you do assessment of your partners also. So you have right to do the assessment. So that's how you make your contract, that I can come to your premises and I can do the risk assessment.
Awesome. So we move on to the next question, and this is a question that I love talking about, and this is for Krishna. So Krishna, API security is one of the core topics right now in the world, because practically everything is connected to each other with APIs. And if you look at the overall web traffic that's going on in the world right now, I think around 60% of all of it is actually API traffic, right? It's not GET requests, it's not fetching HTML pages anymore. It's just JSON talking to each other and so on. So when many companies are integrating with third parties using only APIs, API security is something that becomes extremely important. So what is your opinion on API security? How should startups and enterprises look at API security? And how do you solve? There's so many challenges that arise in this space. You have shadow APIs, which are unused API endpoints that are not documented but are operational. How do you go about that?
Yeah, it is definitely a problem that we are facing, not just in terms of the third party, right? Even within your ecosystem, you have a hell of a lot of these services running, and these endpoints exposed, and over a period of time they get lost, they get forgotten,
They get lost. Yeah.
So definitely good amount of work and stuff goes into managing and maintaining these things, and I would spend more time on the internal side of things, because there is also the external side. Because for example, the way we do, it's an API first approach that we take, even from an internal development side of things, and that's what we end up exposing to the outside world as well, as a SaaS offering and whatnot. So we really need to be baking in those things into how we go about building the right API ecosystem and baking in API security, right? So there's someone, I think it was Satish earlier, who was talking about the whole shift left strategy and stuff. How do you really bring that to the forefront? Not as the end thing, but how do you really bake that into the API design part? So how are the tokens managed? How are the secrets managed? What kind of what is the header policy that you use? So on and so forth. So that kind of gets baked into how you end up developing stuff. And I think that also translates into what you need to expect with the API integrations that you are looking at or integrating or working with. And then what are the best practices that is being followed. And also, what the other aspect to it is, again, with all the data, you mentioned about what are you really passing on and what, right? So that's where the partnerships also become really key in terms of, there is no one size fits all. But then SaaS offering an API has a set contract interface and whatnot. It might not be the exact fit for what you're looking at, but is there a way to tweak it? Okay. To serve your use case with just enough stuff that is required that you pass back and forth to make it work for you. Correct. So you take away all the extraneous stuff, or trying to reduce that threat surface there in that case. So all the best practices involved around having that clean ecosystem, and then these days there are really good tools available.
API security platform.
Which bakes it into the whole CD side of things too, and of course all the different testing strategies, penetration systems, and so on and so forth that you do to make sure that you're on the right side of these things.
Correct. Correct. No, I think one of the big problems that arise over here is just discovery of the endpoints, right? And as an organization scales to such a large extent, you may have 1,000 million API endpoints at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So what is the strategy to ensure that everything gets documented, right? Because all developers hate documentation. I think everybody kind of knows that, right? But from a security perspective, you can understand how documentation is important. How do you enforce that? Everybody documenting everything they're building.
Yeah, I mean, one is lack of documentation, and sometimes there's a lot of crappy documentation, right? So what we are doing currently, the practice that we've just started on is the service chassis-based architecture. So where we end up creating all those core components, those building blocks that our engineers, that our folks can leverage to bootstrap an application. So some of these things are actually baked in terms of these best practices. The part that we mentioned around the security side, and the same thing applies for the documentation side of things too, where these things become not an task, but there is a base version that is available already, and there is a good amount of platforms as well that is coming up, that provides that whole end-to-end integration. With your platform as a product, I'm not endorsing anything, by the way, but products like Backstage and whatnot that really helps bring things to the forefront, to get a proper inventory of what is out there, and not just that, but going deep down into the behavior in terms of the usage, in terms of the lineage, in terms of tracing stuff through. So there's a good amount of innovation happening there, and I think investing there, bringing those kind of tools into the ecosystem could help reduce the pain.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think reducing the pain is something very important. Like all of cybersecurity is always, there's no, end. Okay, I've done cybersecurity for my company. That's it. I'm done. It's always a journey. It's always a process, and just making that process easier is what everyone is kind of striving for. I've seen API security incidents a lot in the wild as well. Recently, I was doing a pen test, and I won't name the company. They had a payment gateway basically implemented with one of the larger providers, and the issue that I identified was, you add an iPhone to your cart, and you go to pay. You click on pay, and then you enter your card details, and then that pop-up opens for entering your OTP, right? So instead of entering the OTP, you just close that tab, and you come back to the previous page, and it says, transaction has succeeded. So, what could be the problem here? The problem here wasn't on the half of the provider side of things, right? The API gateway, the payment gateway provider was secure. They were tested. But the client-side implementation of the API was messed up. So, all kinds of issues arise over here, and that's just how it goes. And, moving from there, Vikram, I would like you, to ask you a question. If you can share, without, again, disclosing any secretive or revealing details, any interesting incident that you've seen in integrating with a third-party service provider that you can share with us, with the audience and everyone else.
Yeah, so I think I'll probably talk a little bit about that, and then sort of go around a few low-hanging fruits that we've seen work in various companies that we've worked with. So I think one of the instances that I could probably recall is again, a third party with certain business processes that were outsourced, right? And those are core business processes, and that third party was connected to the mother network via MPLS, etc. The third party got compromised, and then there was lateral movement happening back onto the core enterprise network. Now again, third party risk management, vendor risk assessment, everything was done. But there was still a compromise, right? Now, how is that compromise detected? Via, there were solutions such as network detection and response in place. There were SIM platforms in place that started flagging off lateral movement. That's where I think, one understood that it's actually a third party that's been compromised that's trying to make way into, the core network. So I think there, that's precisely, what we're talking about. So a lot of times, assessments are definitely good. That's like a must have, but it's also important to make sure that you either extend your security controls, or if not, at least at a bare minimal, have enough observability and monitoring in place so that in case there is a compromise at one of the third parties, you get to know and before things go or too bad. Another scenario that I could probably recall is there was an API integration. Data was sort of going out, but the third party was compromised and the data was made public.
Right.
Now again, so there as well, it's important to leverage technology, such as surface dark web monitoring to understand or to get a head start into an incident, just to make sure that you pull the right plugs where required. And fixes for stuff like this is easy, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. So let's say, and I'm a firm believer that humans, there are always mistakes. It's human nature to falter, right? So it's very important to have technology controls in place that give you the right visibility at the right time. For instance, we talked about APIs being insecure or going live, right? So we've seen instances where APIs go live without the security team getting to know about it.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, I mean, use an SIEM platform to notify you when an API goes live without consent, and there's your first line of defense. Right?
Correct. No, I think these incidents are kind of going global everywhere, and in fact, I think a lot of bug bounty hunters who would be here would be noticing this as well. If you want an XSS on an application, you look for places where there is an iframe of a third party. And if you find an XSS on that third party, you are able to actually gain cross-site request forgery on the domain you're trying to hack. And this is one of the best ways because, the third party may be insecure, but that is leading to the main domain's compromise. And that causes a lot of problems across the world, and big bounties have been given out. We're running a bit short of time, so I'm going to move on to the, final set of questions. So Apurva sir, one question, and that is something very interesting that's popping in is AI, right? And with things like ChatGPT and all coming in, you're always scared that, there's going to be some AI hacker that's going to come in now, right? And ruin all the overall security measures that you have in place. But there's also the hope that, okay, AI will supplement security solutions that are there already, which it is already doing. So what is your opinion on AI helping you out or harming you in the overall InfoSec space as a security leader? If you can shed some light on that.
So like you said, it works on both the sides, positive and negative. Definitely, it is a continuous effort that you have to make. How do you protect your organization? So when you look at your strategy, you have to see how you can have threat intel fed into your system, have AI, ML running that, because today, with a lot of data logs coming in, it is humanly impossible to read all the logs and all that. So that is where AI is going to help you. But at the same time, threat actors are going to use the same thing against you. Today, if you look at phishing, the phishing emails have become like a realistic email with the use of AI technologies. So definitely that's pros and cons. And when you see, the AI also works on the data that you feed in. So if your data is biased, you are not going to get the right answer.
Right.
So that's where you have to put a strategy in place, how you are going to have your AI tools working with your security system to give you the right intel to protect your environment.
So I think that's very important, and you pointed out very rightly that today itself people are using AI to write phishing emails, and they're very good, right? And similarly, this can scale to whatever length. So having good controls in place is becoming very important. Vikram, we'll wrap it off with a question to you, right? The recent DPDP bill has basically come in India. You would have heard of it. I think everybody in this audience has. It's one of the first laws that has been implemented for data security, for cyber security at all in India. And I think the good part of it is that there is a massive fine on it. So people will actually get down to implementing it. So what is your opinion on the DPDP bill and how it's going to impact companies working with other vendors? Because that's where I think everyone is really concerned, right? If you can shed some light on that.
I think the first thing that's going to probably start happening is law firms are going to make a lot of money, for sure, right? And so I think there's going to be a massive revision of contracts, liability shifts, liability caps probably getting capped at the DPDP fine rather than anything else. Cyber insurance is going to make a lot of money, right? So I think these are some aspects that are natural, and we saw the same shift in the European Union with the GDPR coming in. It's definitely a very important step in not just third-party security but security health of the nation.
Correct.
And I think it's a step in the right direction for sure, because we all know how personal data is treated. We all get numerous number of spam calls, and I think this is a lot to do with primary as well as third-party data processing. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. So as long as it's enforced in the right way. One of the biggest reasons why GDPR has been such a massive success is the level of enforcement. Whether it was the FANG companies, whether it was any multi-billion-dollar company, when there was a breach, it was followed by action. So I think that's enforcement is going to be key for us to see this actually hit the road.
I think everybody is looking forward to that enforcement. And I was speaking to a security leader a couple of weeks back, and they were telling me the same thing. Whoever cracks implementation of DPDP automatically is going to make a lot of money, right? Because everybody is concerned about it. So I think we'll wrap it up, open up to the audience if anybody wants to ask any questions to the panelists on any of the topics. The questions, anyone?
Okay, I think people will reach out to you.
We've run out of time.
No, I think, we are a bit on the time. So I just wanted to add, it is a lot of the default settings, as you all were mentioning, right? Is the human error. We have a lot of resources itself available, whichever cloud we take it. We have a lot of security default options. If people look into it, then also we can prevent a lot of things. But I just want to thank you all.